It all began with an apple pie. Let's rewind to a few months ago, when my mom, my dad, my little brother and I all decided to do something nice to celebrate my brother's graduation from middle school. So we made a plan. My mom would bake a pie, and the rest of us would eat it. Now, my mom did ask us to get some of the ingredients for the pie. You know, the apples, the flour, the sugar, the butter, a whole lot of other things that I don't really remember since we chose to play baseball instead. When we came back inside, we wondered where the pie was, but my mom made it very clear to us that in our family, if we don't all work together, nothing is going to get done. She told us that cooperation is critical. Folks, the same is true of our economy. Without cooperation, we'll have some severe trust issues. And when it comes to our trusting corporations to give workers their fair share, there is nothing cooking. A recent U.S. Public Affairs Council survey found that the American public firmly believes that corporations put their CEOs first, with everything else trailing after. However, when those same Americans were asked whom corporations should put first, the answer was equally clear. The employees should be at the top, executives at the bottom. Those who do the work should reap the rewards. In this age of multi-million-dollar golden parachutes, it's no wonder that many Americans are feeling frustrated with the current corporate pecking order. Many people have already resigned themselves to the idea that having a successful business climate means deifying CEOs who will do whatever it takes so long as the outcome is income. Fortunately for the rest of us, it does not have to be this way. Historically, businesses run in an egalitarian way have been extraordinarily successful, both in terms of profitability and in terms of their workers' quality of life. When everybody shares some ingredients, everyone can have a piece of the pie. The U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives defines worker cooperatives as business entities that are owned and controlled by their members, the people who work in them. However, in the current economic environment, these cooperative businesses, or co-ops, need a little boost in order to have an equal playing field with established corporations. But before we get there, first, let's have a taste of the history of co-ops. Second, we'll look at the co-op recipe for success. And finally, we'll take a bite into the legislation necessary to support these organizations. But first, the story of co-ops begins in Rochdale, England, 1844, as the Industrial Revolution causes more and more skilled tradesmen to become destitute. 10 weavers decide to take matters into their own hands when they create the Rochdale Society of Equitable Pioneers, a cooperative. The Rochdale Co-op was very successful, and in the 10 years after it was established, nearly 1,000 co-ops were created throughout Britain. The widespread success of the Rochdale model caused economists to take note. While most businesses are structured in a way which concentrates power and profits into the hands of a few executives and investors at the top, unlike most businesses, the worker cooperative is more egalitarian. More specifically, each working member has an equal dividend of the profit and a vote. By making business decisions in a democratic way, cooperatives offer workers more democracy, more freedom, and more of a stake in their own workplace. But what can this larger stake in the workplace allow co-op workers to cook up? Many amazing things. You see, the underlying issue here is that cooperatives and corporations are fundamentally different. While a cooperative puts the interests of its workers first, a corporation is legally required to put profits into the pockets of shareholders. And nobody knows this better than Henry Ford. In 1915, Ford's automobile empire yielded nearly $60 million in profits. Ford decided to be nice and double his workers' wages. But no good deed goes unpunished. Ford's shareholders sued the company and ultimately won, establishing the legal principle known as shareholder value. This means that corporations are legally required to chase profits and to put said profits over people. However, by simply changing the power structure of the workplace, cooperatives alter the very fabric of our society. The Rochdale pioneers who started the Rochdale Co-op created a series of guidelines for ethical business practices. These are known as the Rochdale Principles, and they have been changed and amended over time. By now they include workplace equality, giving back to the community, and protecting the environment. To this last end, many modern cooperatives, such as the Touchstone Energy Co-op, the Cooperative Energy Community, and the Energy Cooperative of America, provide clean electricity, reduce energy consumption, and thereby reduce carbon emissions. In this age of growing economic inequality and looming climate change, cooperatives are something that the planet desperately needs more of. So this raises the question, what can we do to help these co-ops? Well, the answer does not involve keeping them in business. A 2011 study found that 44% of co-ops lasted at least 10 years, as opposed to just 20% of conventional businesses. The issue is expanding co-ops and getting them started in the first place. I advocate that the U.S. federal government would allocate funds to a cooperative development fund in order to do this. The purpose of the Cooperative Development Fund will be to start up worker-owned cooperatives throughout the country. I propose that we spend $5 billion a year on starting up these worker-owned cooperatives. Now, the U.S. Small Business Administration estimates that on average it costs about $30,000 to start up a small business. If we spend $5 billion a year to this purpose, we could probably create roughly 166,666.667 cooperatives every year. By the way, I don't know how you can create 0.667 of anything, but at any rate, the fact of the matter is that on average, a worker cooperative in the U.S. has about 11 employees. So we would probably be able to create roughly 1,800,000 jobs. But you might be wondering, how are we going to pay for this? Well, for one thing, when we're creating over 1 million jobs a year, we'll probably be able to reduce the unemployment rate. And this means that there will be less of a demand for unemployment checks and food stamps. Second of all, these new cooperatives will pay taxes. Think of this as an investment. We'd be investing in American workplace democracy, American ingenuity, and a new revenue base for Uncle Sam. But this is more than just legislation that we're dealing with today. Part of the whole idea of a worker cooperative is taking matters into one's own hands and creating social change rather than just waiting for politicians. We must remember that the way a business is structured will determine who makes decisions that affect all of us. And finally, we must stop binding ourselves to corporations that put profits over people. Therefore, I ask you to cooperate with me in making worker co-ops more widespread so that everybody who lends some ingredients can have a piece of the pie. Thank you.